that leads us to the other part of this industry that was so polarized by this. Like, you're talking about the people who are a part of the Q programs and the educators, right? But those of us who are not a part of those communities were polarized by this because the SCA and the CQI decided to spring this on an industry in a year where all of this is going on, like the price crisis, the supply crisis, the climate crisis, the tariffs, the currency issues, the logistical issues. All of this stuff is going on, and this is the problem that the SCA decided was the right one to solve. If you're looking for a free way to support the work we do, bringing you conversations with our amazing guests on the Daily Coffee Pro podcast by Map It Forward, please subscribe, follow, and rate us wherever you listen to the podcast. It really helps us out. It's also a huge help if you share this episode and our social media content with your coffee friends. For links, check the show notes. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of an awesome 5-part series with Tim Heinze from the Sustainable Coffee Institute. We are talking about the changes being made to the Q, and in this episode, we're talking about why are people so polarized by this decision. So I want to start this conversation with a quote, and this is a quote from an article that where Cosimo Libardo was interviewed. I have seen 0 articles where Yanis is actually the person who's being interviewed, but Yanis did repost this article, and he said on LinkedIn, and he said, "Well said, Cosimo." So, or "well put, Cosimo," something like that. So I want to read you guys this quote to start off this conversation. And Cosimo says, "The point is that today, if we want to make our sector sustainable, we must use modern tools that provide usable information. Our first commitment is to aim to bring those who have previously certified themselves into the new system in the least traumatic way possible, including all." What I want to draw your attention to there, and I guess this is where we can start this conversation, Tim. In my opinion, when you're acknowledging that the path forward is going to be traumatic, either more traumatic or less traumatic, and you've made a decision to acknowledge the trauma in this, and on top of that, you've decided to a lack of transparency about the rollout of this process, I expect corporations to act like that. We would not be surprised if a corporation did that. But the SCA is not a corporation. The CQI is not a corporation. These are both registered non-profits who are telling us that, in that same article, Cosimo goes on to say that they've self-appointed, that they want to embrace the role of being the umbrella for this industry, where everybody can kind of come together in. Why would we trust you? I feel like a fundamental trust has been broken. And in that quote saying, in the least traumatic way possible, is the acknowledgement that this was going to hurt the industry somehow. Am I seeing that the wrong way?
No, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of different perspectives that I can see the way that trauma unfolds. I think I think SCA and CQI, I really do think that they knew that this was going to be traumatic, specifically for the CQI instructors, the instructor group, the Q graders globally, the individuals that have invested time, money, energy, resources into the educational programs and into promoting those educational programs. So I think that's a perspective that they
anticipated
for sure. I think that they also even evidenced by this announcement about the scale of payment and scale of cost for courses across producing countries versus consuming countries, etc. I think they acknowledge a lack of accessibility for these courses and that being the trauma that is going to cause. But the fact, for me, the fact that they acknowledge that the forcing of, or the
No, that's the right word.
emphasis, yeah, I think forcing of the entire industry under one form is going, that there are significant hurdles that will be, you know, that will be had to be overcome in achieving that. But the fact that they see that as the outcome or the goal, as opposed to saying we want to introduce a tool that the industry can use or make available to use to help them achieve the outcomes that they desire. Maybe it's the right one, maybe it's not, but you get to choose. You get the choice. And I think maybe they probably think that that's what it is, but that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. I mean, there are producers that are now faced with the question of, well, now do I, in order to like trade the coffee that I'm producing, do I now have to know this new form? Like if I start getting feedback from roasters that say, oh, well, you know, your CVA score is whatever, or here's my CVA evaluation of your coffee, and it's a 4-page document of all of this different stuff. If I have no way how to understand or interpret that, there is a traumatic experience that I either now have to just take you at your word and just say, well, okay, what can you pay me? Or is it now, or do I have to then contemplate within my own business decision, okay, now I have to allocate resources to try to go get trained in this so I can understand it. And to me, that's the overwhelming traumatic aspect to this decision, is that there's now a forcing of, or an attempt to force the entire industry to comply around this form and this method of evaluation. And the reason why I believe that this extends, and I also, the side of the instructor side, the educator, the trainer side, one polarizing aspect of this decision from the educator trainer aspect is a strong dissatisfaction, strong rejection of SCA's model for education. And I don't have firsthand experience of this. I did license as an AST. I want to be clear. I was licensed from like 2017 to 2020, or maybe 2023. I never taught an SCA course. I early on in my career in 2017, I did it because I thought maybe I would do some SCA courses. And when it was back SCAA, I never taught a course. And I went through all the SCAA courses. Andrea Allen from Onyx, and Esther Shaw, who's also a coffee professional from the US, were my instructors. Wonderful human beings, wonderful people. I learned a ton. But the current model of SCA education, there are many individuals out there who say, I don't want anything to do with the SCA style of education. The lack of structure around curriculum, the lack of structure around providing specific materials, the kind of wild, wild west nature of what some of the SCA program is. And to exacerbate that even more, overnight, over the weekend of SCA, the Q instructor pool went from 60 to 70 individuals to hundreds, because people applied. Now they still have to take this webinar in order to be able to license to teach. Well, there's no 6-day course yet, so they don't have anything to teach anyways. And there's two sides to this. And I want to be very fair to this argument. There's some who would say, well, that's great because now it's accessible to more. And before, it was like this gatekeeping activity, and it was extremely costly to become a CQI instructor, and that was wrong. And there's other people who would say, okay, but what about the quality of what's being provided? So I want to be very, very fair to acknowledge both of those as valid concerns. Yes, the cost of becoming a CQI educator, both in the Q grader and the post-harvest processing program, are massive barriers and massive hurdles that have to be addressed by CQI. It has to be. And I've strongly advocated for that for years, and I've strongly pushed that even in recent conversations, like within the last week or two, to CQI. But the other aspect of that is the quality of educators and the quality of buying a certificate versus actually being trained in something is a big issue that I think SCA as an educational program focuses. And I don't have firsthand, but I have secondhand, very clear information from individuals who have said, look, I I just paid a guy, he sent me a link, I took a test online, and now I'm certified in this. Like, it was and like there's a delicate balance in my mind between increasing accessibility, which is critical, and maintaining a quality of a certification, of a program, of an educational program that ensures people have the skills and competencies they need for the jobs that they're going to be doing. So I think some of the polarization that's come from this announcement is, on one hand, on the educator trainer side, that says, I don't want anything to do with the SCA education program. Been there, done that, was in it for a couple of years, and don't want to go that route. And the polarizing nature of, okay, now I have to decide from the producer, processor, roaster, quality control person, like, if I don't convert to this new program, this new certification, and take this 2-day CVA course, like, the certificate that I have, that I've leveraged to get this job, to get this position, to invest in myself professionally, do I lose that now? Do I lose that leverage, that opportunity, that value that I have as a professional to continue? And that trauma, that traumatic experience, or that traumatic, like, decision point is massive, because you have individuals in our industry that, yes, have the access to those courses, and yes, can make a choice. Do I want to go take that course or not? I know that I sit from a very privileged position of having that opportunity. If I wanted to go take a CVA for Cuppers course tomorrow, I could do it. I could go find a place. I could pay my plane ticket. I could travel. I could pay for my hotel. I could do all of that. But that's not, in my opinion, representative
That's so privileged. It's such a privileged position.
100%.
I'm saying what they're requiring is for,
yes,
someone has to be in such a privileged position to make the assumption from that ivory tower that everybody's going to be able to do it.
And they've said, well, we're going to make it cheaper.
Is tone deaf.
We're going to make it cheaper for people. We're going to make, like, we're going to do all of these things to try to make it more accessible. I've seen on social media some courses, being offered in Brazil, some courses being offered in Central America, but I and that doesn't mean that they aren't happening, but I haven't heard of many courses in East Africa or in other producing countries around the world. And so, yes, I acknowledge I have that. I'm sitting in that privileged position, and I'm choosing, I will not be pursuing that. And it's not because I'm a CVA hater. It's not because, I would say, CVA is terrible. I don't think it's the answer to what our industry needs. But I know, again, I have many people that I respect in our industry that are teaching those courses, that are training people in CVA. And I respect them as educators and as people. But that's not the direction that I will be going, and that's not the direction I want to go. But that, again, is, I am extremely privileged and acknowledge that I am, because I can make that decision, and I have the ability to make that decision. Other people, they don't really have the ability to make that decision, one from a financial perspective, but one from an access position. Even if they wanted to go take a CVA course, where are they going to go? Where are they going to go to take that course? And so
and time, bro. Time. You think that a coffee producer or a business owner has 6 days that they can just...
Well, the CVA for Cuppers course, if they're already a Q grader, is a 2-day course. But yes, agreed. And it's additionally, it is the investment of time and resources into the additional 6-day course and all of that. I agree. And it's something that I've really wrestled with, because we've talked, and as instructors, we've talked about, how do we do like a 2-step program to try to make it less of a sacrifice of time? Is there a way to break that up? And CQI has tried to introduce some of that and some of, fluctuations or adjustments to that, because I acknowledge that there is a lot to train on, and it's a process. So, but it's, again, if SCA continues to force the industry and force the issue of positioning people, professionals in our industry to have to convert to using the CVA form and be proficient in its use, then they are going to continue to put people across our industry in that traumatic position of assessing finance, time, resources, accessibility to access those courses. And the timeline of September 30th, you have individuals that are, okay, if I don't do this now before September 30th, I'm faced with the issue of, after the fact, I have to then go pay, and maybe it's December 31st, maybe it's September 30th, whatever it is, it's in 2025. They have to make a decision. Do I take this course and fall under this new certification? Because if I don't this year, then I have to wait. Then going forward, I'm going to have to take this 6-day course, which again is additional time, additional resources, additional expense. And so it's like it's a turning point where they have to decide, do I do this or do I not do this? And if I don't do this, then will all of those values, all of the reasons why I pursued this in the first place, do I lose that? And that's something that I think people, the reason why it continues to polarize and to create the traumatic kind of decision point that people are facing.
The thing that I think is really important for people to understand is that if you don't get certified in this, if you decide to let your Q grading not get
lapse,
renewed into whatever certification the CVA is or whatever, life will go on. There are a lot of lapsed Q graders, and I think that it's an important time for people to ask themselves, was I getting recertified every time because I liked the idea of calling myself a Q grader? Or was I actually learning new things? Or was it that I loved being around community? If you weren't, but if any of those things are attached to ego, I would invite you to revisit in a year like 2025, where there's so much volatility going on. This may be your opportunity to say, you know what, I think I've learnt what's necessary to learn to do my job really well. And I would, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I didn't mean, I would just add to that I think there are also individuals who are currently in jobs across the world, probably predominantly consuming countries, though I think there would be some in producing countries that, I've had people come take the 1-day calibration course for Q grader who were required by their job to keep that certification up. The company gets value from saying we have a licensed certified individual that works on staff here. So there's that aspect of it where they the company gets value out of it. There are producers that, I believe that they're able to leverage that to, whether it's foot in the door, whether it's certain types of standing. I do think that there is also a component of it that people are faced with the real question of sitting down with their supervisor saying, okay, I know I'm the person on staff or the individual, one of the individuals on staff that has this. If I don't pursue this, do I lose my job? Do I lose my position here? And so while I think in addition to that, there are people, whether it's ego, whether it's, the interaction, the community, whether they feel it's a professional development opportunity, there is, I think I would agree, there are all those aspects. But I think there's also the very real person who says,
I agree. Yeah.
This is the industry. This is kind of the industry certification for a sensory professional that I'm required, like, just like a CPA license or something, another type of license that is used in other industries to show or to provide evidence of a skill, which we could talk for days about whether that's misplaced, which
Right.
I think is valid. But there are some of those
But
individuals.
let's be like that. I'm really glad that you brought that up, the CPA thing. So, folks, for those who don't know, CPA is a qualification for a chartered accountant, and you have to continually get requalified and recertified in that. And the reason is because laws change,
Laws change.
and laws that govern countries, that like economies are built off, they are laws that change. That's why you have to get certified. And as a certified CPA, anything that you sign off on, any tax, any financial, anything that you sign off on, you are liable for in a court of law. That's apples and oranges with the CVA.
And
right?
yes, and I would say that somebody who would view their Q-grader certificate as in a similar thread. When there are legal disputes or there are trading of coffees, and there's certain individuals that are responsible to evaluate those coffees. So as an example, if you're working in an importer and you're relying on that certification to confirm or deny buying a container of coffee, and because you weren't aligned, you weren't calibrated, you weren't keeping up your skill, whatever it is, you made the wrong decision, you could be out of a job. Now, it completely respect the fact for a CPA, like the stakes are significantly different because it's legal standing in a court, and 100%. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I acknowledge the lapse and the gap between those two. But I do acknowledge that, and I do know that many people that would come to courses that were participating in the ongoing upkeep of their certification, it was for them a part of maintaining that position, maintaining that standing. And one of the gaps in that program, full stop, as somebody who's been in it, is the aspect of professional development. I think that's been a missing element to much of what the programs that I've been a part of at CQI that has to be, it is such a critical element. People want to continue learning, and our industry is changing, and our industry is facing new challenges, and like from quality control to sensory evaluation to processing to trade to so many things. And there is a huge need, a massive need, to provide intentional, ongoing professional development that's accessible and that's relevant to those individuals in that industry. And I believe that's what people want. And I think it's a huge need.
Right. And because we're going to bring politics into this now, because we can't have a series anymore without talking about politics. The part of this, back to our dinner, Tim, because it always ends on politics at our dinners. The part of this that is really strange to me is the similarities between what's happening with the Trump tariffs and what's happening with this situation with the CVA. Bear with me, I promise it makes sense. The argument is at the moment that the problem that Trump's trying to solve with these tariffs is a real problem. Is the solution the right solution? Is what's up for debate, and time will tell. And the same thing here. We have an issue in our industry that we need unified language around how to talk about the quality of coffee and the value of coffee. We need, this problem exists. But this is, in my opinion, this is putting the horse before the cart. Because we have a complex agricultural product that's a part of a complex logistical supply chain that has so many things broken about it that we're starting at the value of the coffee as the way that we want to solve the problems that we exist in coffee. The number of things that I have gone to the SCA about the real life dangerous things that I have gone to the SCA about, and they have done fuck all about it, would blow your mind, folks. Does this problem exist that the SCA is trying to solve? Yes. In my opinion, yes. The CQI was working on addressing it. For whether they were getting there or not, who knows? The SCA has decided that the money that they invested in the consultants to come up with this program had to be followed through right through to the end. But then we end up with a year like 2025, where all of the underlying problems under what the CVA is trying to address, the real life like root cause problems, are all exacerbating very, very quickly. And that leads us to the other part of this industry that was so polarized by this. Like, you were talking about the people who are a part of the Q programs and the educators, right? But those of us who are not a part of those communities were polarized by this because the SCA and the CQI decided to spring this on an industry in a year where all of this is going on, like the price crisis, the supply crisis, the climate crisis, the tariffs, the currency issues, the logistical issues. All of this stuff is going on, and this is the problem that the SCA decided was the right one to solve. This is why I go back to the stuff that I'm saying on social media, which is like, listen, guys, we think that the SCA is here to do one thing, and their values, vision, and mission state a completely different thing to what we think that they do. They are here for research, education, and events. Very clearly stated. They are living by their business fundamentals. We're expecting that they're here to solve problems for the industry. That is not their mandate. And so those of us who are pissed about this and polarized by this because we think it's completely tone deaf, and we're watching producers like laugh at the suggestion that they're going to take time out of trying to figure out how they're going to find water so that they can go and learn the CVA. It's just embarrassing. I think significantly talked myself out of being invited to do anything to do with anything in this industry by episode 4 of this series. I'm not going to be invited to anything anymore. You might be, Tim, but I clearly won't be.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I might be falling in that category as well.
Well, you know, the thing is, like, we run mastermind groups, right? And the mastermind groups have people from across the world and across the supply chain. When we're talking about the CVA in these, and I am always really fascinated by what's happening in the industry and how it's being reflected by all of these people in these mastermind groups. And a lot of them are scratching their heads right now. A lot of them are saying, like, do people understand, like, how much trouble we're in as an industry? That this should be the thing that they want to talk about? I'm trying to figure out how to raise the money to pay the tariffs. Like, I don't know how to find 145% to pay for my packaging. That's a very real problem. And while the SCA couldn't have anticipated that, because I know that allegedly there was a conversation that was had with the board that they knew a crisis was happening, allegedly, they knew something was coming. Okay, final episode of the series. What are the options available to the community of Q graders? Then now we're going to really, like, I've got some challenging questions that you all have sent to me to ask Tim about SCI. So I'm going to read straight off a list. So join us for the final episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.